Michael Johnson, who just turned 33, was standing frozen in my living room. The reason was my wife, Emily.
I can't take it anymore.
Emily screamed hysterically.
You do nothing. I handle the kids and house alone. You get to relax and eat out. I'm always enduring.
Her eyes narrowed, glaring at me.
Why did I marry someone like you? There were better choices. I was foolish. Tied to you. I can't stand it anymore.
As I stood speechless, she delivered the final blow.
You're a self-assertive, pretending to work hard for me and for Natalie. I can't stand anymore. Let's separate. I'm taking Natalie to my parents' house.
Shouting that, Emily stormed out of the living room. I was left behind, completely clueless about what had just happened. Just an ordinary office worker, met Emily when I was 25 years old. I fell for her at first sight, both of us working at the same company. After a relentless pursuit, I finally succeeded in marrying her. She was strong-willed, beautiful, and kind-hearted, with many admirers. When I, a guy whose only trait was being serious, managed to win her over, everyone at the office was amazed. We married when I was 28 and she was 27. A year later, our daughter Natalie was born. Everyone, including our parents, was at the peak of happiness. Emily quit her job to become a full-time homemaker. I worked tirelessly for Emily and our daughter Natalie. I wanted to give them a good life and also provide opportunities for Natalie to attend extracurricular activities. For that reason, I worked harder at my job than ever before. My efforts paid off with several promotions. Everything seemed perfect. Emily always told me,
Don't push yourself too hard. If you fall ill, it's all for naught.
I told her that wasn't the case. You look pale lately. If Natalie's keeping you up, wake me up. She'd smile and say,
You work outside, I handle the home. Let's keep our roles.
No matter when I came home, a delicious meal awaited. Emily did the laundry and cleaning perfectly. Life was blissful. But soon after Natalie's 4th birthday, Emily snapped. And she left with Natalie. A week later, I received divorce papers, leaving me stunned. This left me absolutely stunned. I thought Emily's breakdown was due to parenting fatigue. I hoped she'd calm down at her parents. The day after she left, I called my in-laws. My mother-in-law said to me,
Emily's a bit confused right now. Once she's settled, we'll contact you.
She said that. So, I waited for her call. I believed she'd reach out once calm. After that, there was no contact from her. After receiving the divorce papers, I tried calling Emily repeatedly, wanting to talk to her directly. But Emily never answered her phone. Only her father-in-law or mother-in-law would respond, briefly. I just wanted to know what I had done wrong. But they staunchly refused to have a conversation. Even so, I never stamped the divorce papers and sent them back. They didn't rush me to send them either. Maybe she hadn't made up her mind yet. Clinging to that faint hope, I spent my days, but a year later, I received news of Emily's death. It was just a formal death notice written in a bureaucratic tone. The funeral was over, and she had been laid to rest. They even wrote that offerings were unnecessary. It was clearly a death notice sent just to an acquaintance. It was not a letter informing a husband of his wife's death. It felt like I was even denied the chance to pray for her at her gravesite. I mustered my strength and called Emily's family home. Her father answered in a cold tone.
She is no longer connected to you in any way. Please don't concern yourself.
I couldn't say anything and just turned off my smartphone. Why did Emily and her family hate me so much? It was truly baffling. And even then, I couldn't bring myself to hate Emily. My bright, strong, cheerful, and kind Emily. I couldn't get closure from a death notice. I didn't know why this happened or who to blame. The only reason I had to live was our daughter, Natalie. I presumed she is living with Emily's parents and must be in the first grade now. Knowing it might be rejected, I bought a backpack for her first grade and sent it to Emily's family in the spring. The result was not a return, but a letter saying, "Further concerns like this are unnecessary." It felt like my connection with Natalie had been definitively severed. I am Emily's husband and Natalie's father. No one answered my cries. I lived my days in gloom. I was going to work, but it was just a matter of going through the motions. Then, 4 years later, I was called in by my boss.
You've heard we're partnering with an Israeli internet company.
I replied, of course. I'd heard this rapidly growing internet company was eagerly sought after for a partnership.
Their vice president, or rather co-owner, will be visiting. Bob, the executive vice president, will handle it, but they specifically requested you to be on the team.
Why me? I couldn't help but ask.
I'm not sure why. Just join them as a part of the hospitality team.
I agreed as he asked. The old me might have been thrilled by such an opportunity, but now it just felt like another task assigned to me. A week later, the representatives of the company arrived. The executive vice president, his aide, and I were at the company entrance to welcome the delegate. A woman in her 30s confidently stepped out of the car. Female executives aren't rare these days. But what surprised me the most was that she had a distinctly Jewish-looking appearance. Moreover, she looked just like my ex-wife, Emily. As the executive vice president and his aide politely greeted her, I listened in a daze. I would have remained frozen if the director hadn't nudged me. Pleased to meet you. I'm Michael Johnson, in charge of general affairs. I'll be assisting you. Please feel free to ask for anything. I managed to say, extending my hand for a handshake.
I'm Hannah Parter. Nice to meet you.
She said in fluent English. Her voice also resembled Emily's. After a discussion in the reception room with our CEO, we moved on to business talks. Her internet company, started with her husband, now formed a huge network. The annual turnover was astonishing. The company has applied to partner with ours, and I could tell that our president is very enthusiastic about it.
If we agree on these terms, we can give a positive response. Let's finalize the details and then consult our partners. I'll be in USA for about 2 weeks to work on this.
What about Emily? Did she ever call me her husband? That might have been humiliating for her proud self. I couldn't take my eyes off Hannah, even during work, lost in such farts. After the first meeting, it was my task to escort her back to the hotel. I guided her in the company car, asking her to contact me if there were any issues during her stay.
Thank you. I'll give you my number.
I was about to leave after taking her number, saying goodbye. Looking at Emily's face any longer was painful, but Hannah smiled and said, "Oh, are you leaving already? How about joining me for lunch?" She said so. I couldn't refuse the vice president of a company we were about to partner with. "Any preferences for lunch?" She smiled and chose Japanese cuisine. I called the hotel's Japanese restaurant. "Yes, for two." As I was speaking, Hannah took the phone from me.
Do you have a private room? A table? That's fine, thank you.
In the serene ambience of the restaurant's private room, I sat opposite Hannah for lunch. Though the food should have been delicious, I couldn't even register its taste or what I was eating. My wife, whom I didn't want to separate from and who died without my knowledge, had a face identical to the one before me. It was impossible to stay calm. It's impossible to stay calm when someone with the same face is right in front of me. Hannah seemed to enjoy the meal, and occasionally, she looked at me with curiosity. As the course meal ended and dessert and tea were served, I thought I was finally free from this ordeal. Then, out of the blue, Hannah said,
My maiden name was Hannah Levin. Does this surname ring a bell?
I nearly dropped the teacup I was holding. Levin, wasn't that Emily's family name? Could she be?
Just as my sister described, Mr. Johnson.
Emily's sister? I never heard about her. I don't recall meeting her at our wedding. But wait, I vaguely remember Emily mentioning her during our engagement. When I said, "Your parents will be lonely without their only child," Emily replied,
Actually, I have a sister, but she left home due to a falling out with our father. He told her, "You're disowned, and you'll never cross this threshold again." And true to his word, she hasn't come back since. It seems like Dad regrets it now, but he's too stubborn to admit it.
She said this with a bitter smile. So, this woman is Emily's sister. I spoke in a low voice. I heard a little that you left home because of issues with your father.
That's right. I left right after high school graduation and went to Israel. Took all the money I saved from part-time jobs. I enrolled in a university there, but life was tough. Emily always helped me out.
Emily had even sent her tuition fees.
We were estranged from our parents, but Emily and I stayed in touch. I remember her emails when she started dating you.
At first, her emails described you as a boring, serious man who couldn't say anything witty. But gradually, they changed to describe you as a reliable and trustworthy person.
When you proposed, she was over the moon. It was clear how much she was head over heels for you.
With a hint of loneliness, Hannah smiled, but the Emily I knew was more composed. Even when I proposed, she acted as if it was overdue.
Emily was strong-willed and a big show-off. She probably never showed that side to you. But she truly loved you deeply.
I was stunned listening to her. Hannah continued.
She was thrilled when Natalie was born. Parenting was harder than she thought, but she was so happy. She said she couldn't fall behind you, who worked so hard.
Emily, who never broke her cool demeanor in front of me. Yet she loved me and Natalie that much. Then why did Emily bring up separation? Hannah took a deep breath and answered the question in my eyes.
When Natalie was 6, Emily took her to the hospital for a cold. Emily wasn't feeling well herself and got checked. That's when they found cancer.
I was shocked. Emily did look tired back then. I thought it was exhaustion from childcare and told her to rest. But she always smiled and said she was fine.
The cancer was stage 4, already too late for surgery. The doctors said all they could do was contain it with chemotherapy.
Emily told her over the phone in a frozen tone.
It's hopeless. They gave me at most 2 years. That's why I decided to leave him, take Natalie, and leave the house.
Hannah scolded her that it was a foolish thing to say. But Emily laughed and said,
Michael adores me. If he knew about my diagnosis, he'd be devastated. Better to break up now. Let him forget about me, find someone new.
As Emily broke down in tears after saying that, Hannah admonished her.
Don't be ridiculous. Will that make Michael happy?
Emily cried.
I've decided to be hated and then leave.
Then she hung up.
Emily was impulsive and must have been mentally distressed after the diagnosis.
My mouth felt dry, but I managed to ask, why now? Hannah smiled faintly.
When I heard about the partnership, I realized it was with Emily's husband's company. I wondered how you were doing.
And she looked intently at me.
You were reminded of Emily when you saw me. It seemed very painful. Even after 4 years, you haven't forgotten her. I thought it'd be better for you to know everything.
Then she took out her smartphone.
This is the last email from Emily. Would you like to read it?
I nodded. Please let me read it. She handed me the smartphone.
Hannah, I regret it so much. Why did I leave Michael? Why am I dying without him knowing? I was so foolish, really. I want to see him. I want him to see me off.
The words blurred with tears. But I managed to read to the end.
I love him.
I looked at Hannah, holding back tears. She too had tears in her eyes. I lowered my gaze. Thank you for telling me, for showing me the email. I always thought Emily hated me and that's why she wanted to separate. But that wasn't it. I'm so relieved it's overwhelming. Emily, who became the villain to spare me from sadness, even to the point of leaving me. As foolish as it was, part of me is happy to have been loved that much by her.
Really, you and Emily were so alike. Both foolish and clumsy, yet so deeply in love with each other.
Hannah said with tearful eyes, and I decided to check in with her. Did her parents conspire with you? Hannah shrugged.
They're straightforward, impulsive, and a bit foolish too. They worked hard to deceive you.
I thanked her deeply. Then I asked what I was most curious about. How is Natalie? She must be in 5th or 6th grade now. Hannah smiled.
You can still think of other things besides Emily. Before she died, she asked me to take care of Natalie. So, my husband and I became her temporary guardians. And my husband really likes Natalie. He's talking about adopting her officially. What do you think?
I exclaimed that was out of the question. Hannah laughed, just like Emily. Later, I was reunited with Natalie after 5 years and we started living together. She still remembered me. It seems Emily and Hannah often talked about me.
Mom told me in the hospital how happy she was living with you, and even happier after I was born.
But she never told me if Dad would come for me.
Mom didn't say anything, but Hannah did. She said one day I'd live with my dad.
The parents-in-law apologized for deceiving me.
It was the best thing to do at that time, as per Emily's instruction. We thought so too. We're really sorry.
Apparently, the parent and Hannah reconciled after all these years.
They became less stubborn after losing Emily.
Hannah said with a sad smile. Everyone tries to find ways to make their loved ones less sad and less hurt. Emily tried to maintain her lies for my sake. Emily tried not to make me sad, even though she was hated. Your feelings reached me, Emily. Thank you, my wife. I have truly received your love. Someday, Natalie will find someone to love. And if she has children, Emily's blood and memories will pass from Natalie to her children, and then to theirs. A gentle, loving heart will continue and connect to the future. Thank you, Emily. I love you, always and forever. I smiled to Emily in heaven,